Right at this very moment, something unprecedented is happening at United Nations headquarters in New York. Delegates from over 150 countries are on their feet, applauding as resolution after resolution gets passed against the United States. This isn't a normal diplomatic exercise. This is a full-blown revolt, and Trump is completely unhinged, frantically posting on social media while watching his attempt to intimidate the world literally blow up in his face. It's infuriating and at the same time fascinating to see how we got to this point. Let me show you what's really happening behind the cameras. While you're watching the superficial coverage from mainstream media, here you're going to understand the real backstory of this historic crisis. Because what we're witnessing isn't just a diplomatic meeting gone wrong. This is the moment when the world decided it's not going to tolerate authoritarian behavior anymore, not even from the world's greatest superpower. But before we continue, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I want to know where this community is spread across the world. Now, with that done, let's continue. So, how the hell did we get here? Come back with me 72 hours ago. Trump announces with that characteristic arrogance that the United States is withdrawing from the World Health Organization. He thought he was making a power move, that he would force the WHO to bow to his demands. What he didn't expect is that this decision would be the spark that would ignite the biggest international revolt against an American president in modern history. Trump made the announcement with that smug smile, surrounded by advisors who looked just as clueless as he was about the consequences of what was about to happen. He literally said the WHO would regret it, and that within days they'd be begging for the United States to come back. The arrogance was so absurd that even some Republicans started shifting uncomfortably in their seats. In the first 24 hours, there was a tense silence from the international community. No world leader spoke up. No official statement was issued. And Trump? He interpreted that silence as victory. He started posting on social media celebrating, saying things like, "We finally showed who's boss," and "The world learned a lesson today." He was so convinced he had intimidated everyone that he could barely contain himself. What Trump didn't know, and this is crucial, is that the silence wasn't fear. It was calculation. Because behind the scenes, something much bigger was being orchestrated. And when you understand what was happening during those 48 hours of silence, you'll realize the size of the bomb that was about to explode. But what Trump didn't expect was that this apparent calm was hiding the perfect storm. While Trump was celebrating his victory, leaders from dozens of countries were on secret calls coordinating a response that would completely change the game. France, Germany, and Canada led what diplomatic sources describe as the fastest and most coordinated international mobilization since World War II. I'm not exaggerating. It was literally historic. In less than 36 hours, a coalition of countries that included not just European nations, but also traditional US allies like Australia, Japan, and South Korea, worked out a joint strategy. The plan was simple and devastating. Call an emergency United Nations meeting to vote on concrete resolutions of condemnation and, more importantly, action against Trump's unilateral decision. The speed was stunning. Normally, this kind of mobilization takes weeks, sometimes months. But the urgency was real. Countries around the world realized that if Trump got away with leaving the WHO without consequences, he would continue dismantling international institutions one by one. And look, in my opinion, this was the moment when the world finally woke up to the real danger. It was at this point that Trump started to sense something was wrong. Advisors tried to alert him about what was being orchestrated, but he did what he always does, completely ignored them and went on the attack on Twitter. He started writing furious posts about globalist conspiracy and jealous countries trying to bring down America. Each post was more desperate than the last. But when the official call for the emergency meeting was announced publicly, Trump had his first real meltdown. The UN emergency meeting was officially called to happen in 48 hours, and Trump simply exploded. He started a series of social media posts that can only be described as a real-time meltdown. He called the UN a corrupt and failed organization, said the United States would cut all funding immediately, directly threatened allied countries. There was a fascinating detail in all of this. The more Trump attacked, the more countries joined the coalition calling for the meeting. It was like watching someone digging their own hole while screaming they're climbing a mountain. Each angry tweet from him became more evidence for international diplomats that they were dealing with someone completely out of control. Sources inside the White House report that advisors went into full panic mode. They tried to take the phone out of Trump's hands. They tried to convince him to stop posting. But he was in a state that people close to him describe as disconnection from reality. He kept attacking, threatening, making increasingly absurd statements, and the whole world was watching. This shouldn't be happening in a democratic country. A president completely out of control, with no one able to contain him, making decisions that affect millions of lives based on wounded ego. It's exactly the kind of authoritarian behavior this audience is tired of seeing without consequences. But if Trump thought his attacks would intimidate anyone, he was about to find out how wrong he was. The emergency meeting started, and what happened in the first few hours will go down in history books. The United Kingdom, the United States' #1 historic ally, took the floor first. And it wasn't a soft diplomatic criticism. It was a direct and blunt condemnation of Trump's behavior. The British representative said verbatim that they were deeply concerned about behavior that resembles a dictator more than a democratic leader. Canada followed immediately. Then Australia. Then, one by one, NATO countries started standing up and publicly condemning not just the decision to leave the WHO, but Trump's general pattern of authoritarian behavior. It wasn't about partisan politics. It was about defending democratic institutions and international cooperation. There's a specific moment I need to highlight. When Germany's representative said Trump was putting lives at risk with selfish decisions based on personal whims, the entire room fell silent for a few seconds. Then, delegates from dozens of countries started applauding, inside UN headquarters, applauding a condemnation of the President of the United States. This had never happened this way before. And Trump? He called an impromptu press conference. He appeared visibly unhinged, voice shaking, interrupting journalists, attacking allied countries by name. Journalists present describe it as one of the most chaotic and frightening appearances they've ever seen from an American president. Because what was becoming clear is that each of his attacks, each empty threat, was uniting the world against him. The attempt to weaken international institutions had created the biggest global coalition in decades. And the target of that coalition was Trump. But that was just the first round. What came next was even more devastating. Here's the part that mainstream media isn't telling you clearly. The emergency meeting wasn't just to make nice speeches and express concern. The UN was voting on concrete resolutions with real and immediate consequences. And what happened in the next few hours is going to shock you. First resolution presented, creation of an alternative global health fund, completely independent of the United States. Countries committed billions of dollars to ensure that medical research, vaccine development, and pandemic response could continue even without American participation. The vote? 154 countries in favor, only 2 against. If you're shocked by this, hit that like button and stick with me because it's going to get even more intense. Second resolution. Member countries formally committed to ignoring unilateral United States sanctions when those sanctions affect global public health cooperation. This is huge. It was basically the world saying, we're not going to let the United States use its economic influence to sabotage the health of entire populations anymore. Vote? 149 in favor, 5 against. Third resolution, and this is the most significant. Establishment of new diplomatic channels and decision-making mechanisms on global health issues that effectively exclude the United States from leadership positions. The world was literally creating a parallel structure where the US would have no voice. Let me pause for a second so you can absorb the magnitude of this. The United States, historically the greatest global power, leader in scientific development, reference point in health crisis response, was being voted out, isolated, excluded. And all because of an impulsive decision by Trump based on wounded ego. Trump wanted to punish the WHO for not bowing to him. What he achieved was isolating the United States from the global health system. This is what we call a backfire on an epic scale. And while these resolutions were being approved one after another, Trump was having the most complete and public meltdown of his presidency. In the hours following the resolution votes, Trump posted 47 times on social media. 47 posts in less than 6 hours, and the content was increasingly incoherent. He contradicted himself multiple times, randomly attacked countries, made threats that made no sense whatsoever. Several posts were deleted minutes after being published. But the most absurd moment, and this leaked from multiple sources inside the White House, was when Trump apparently demanded that advisors prepare plans to retake control of UN headquarters in New York. When they explained that UN headquarters is international territory, and that any action against it would be considered a violation of international treaties, he reportedly shouted that treaties mean nothing. Legal advisors went into panic mode. They started making desperate calls to congressional leaders, including Republicans, warning that Trump was in a dangerous state. And look, when even Republicans start publicly distancing themselves, you know the situation is beyond salvageable. Because each unhinged statement from Trump generated a new wave of international condemnation. Countries that had initially remained silent started speaking out. South Korea expressed extreme concern. Japan said it was reassessing aspects of the alliance with the United States. Even Israel, an unconditional ally, issued a note saying it was monitoring the situation with apprehension. What Trump had created was a spiral. The more he attacked, the more isolated he became. The more isolated he became, the more unhinged he reacted. And the entire world was watching an American president in total meltdown, live, in real time. But there's something even worse happening behind the scenes that Trump doesn't want you to know. While Trump was having his public meltdown, the real consequences of the crisis he created started to appear. And they weren't abstract or diplomatic. They were concrete and directly affecting Americans. Pharmaceutical companies led by American billionaires started receiving cancellations of international contracts worth billions of dollars. Countries were literally saying, "We don't want to do business with you anymore while this man is in charge." Millionaire executives in the health sector watched their stocks plummet while American universities had medical research partnerships suspended. American scientists were excluded from conferences and international collaborative projects. Preliminary data showed that Trump's decision was costing American jobs, not in small numbers. Estimates talked about tens of thousands of positions at risk just in the medical research and pharmaceutical sector. The attempt to do America first was literally hurting Americans first, from ordinary workers to the business elite that controls the industry. But there's more. State governors started acting on their own. New York, California, Washington, and other states announced they would seek direct partnerships with the WHO, completely bypassing the federal government. This is unprecedented. American states negotiating directly with international organizations because they no longer trust the president to protect their citizens. And the worst part, countries started openly discussing the possibility of denying Americans access to vaccines and treatments developed through the new international structure that excluded the United States. Imagine the irony. Trump, trying to protect America, ended up creating a situation where Americans could be excluded from global medical advances. It's revolting to think we've reached this point. But while this was happening, Trump's own team started to rebel. Leaks from inside the White House became a flood. They were no longer anonymous whispers. They were detailed reports with names, positions, specific descriptions of conversations and decisions. And what these reports revealed was terrifying. Michael Wolff, a journalist known for having access to sources close to Trump, published excerpts from interviews where former advisors called Trump a clear and present danger to national security. One of them said verbatim, "He has no idea of the damage he's causing, and worse, he doesn't care. He just wants to win arguments on the internet." Cabinet members started publicly considering the possibility of collective resignation. The Secretary of State reportedly said in a closed meeting, which later leaked, that he was embarrassed to represent the United States while this circus continues. The Secretary of Defense warned that military officials were concerned about the country's diplomatic isolation. But the most significant moment was when 3 Republican senators, not Democrats, career Republicans, held a joint press conference asking Trump to immediately reconsider the WHO decision and stop attacking historic allies. One of them said a phrase that sums it all up. "We can't keep watching the United States being humiliated internationally by one man's whim." Trump reacted as you'd imagine. He tried to fire people, attacked the senators, called leaks treason. But the damage was done. Even his own base was cracking. And when you connect all these dots, you realize there's something much bigger happening here. Because this crisis isn't random. Here's what mainstream media isn't discussing. Why did Trump really leave the WHO? The superficial explanation is that he thought the organization was too favorable to China, that they didn't treat him with enough respect, that they wanted to control him. But when you look at the bigger pattern, something much more concerning appears. Trump has systematically attacked every institution that can oversee him or hold him accountable. It started with the free press, calling any criticism fake news. Then it was the judicial system, attacking judges who ruled against him. He tried to delegitimize elections before they even happened. And now he's attacking international organizations that could expose the interests of rich and powerful men behind his decisions. The WHO represents global oversight. It has the power to investigate responses to health crises, including how governments handle pandemics. It can publish reports that hold leaders accountable for decisions that cost lives. And Trump doesn't tolerate being held accountable for anything, especially when it might affect the billionaire elite that finances his operations. Authoritarianism analysts around the world are pointing out that this is exactly the playbook. Isolate the country, attack oversight institutions, create narratives of external conspiracy, consolidate power without checks and balances while protecting wealth concentrated in the hands of a few. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's documented historical pattern. And when he tries to eliminate international oversight through this UN crisis, what does he do? He exposes exactly his authoritarian intentions to the entire world, along with the interests of millionaire businessmen who benefit from lack of transparency. The attempt to hide becomes the revelation itself, the final backfire. By trying to remove accountability, Trump showed the world exactly why accountability is necessary. So, where are we now? The United Nations approved historic resolutions isolating the United States from global health decisions. 154 countries united in a coordinated revolt against Trump's behavior. The American president had multiple public meltdowns, posting dozens of times in increasingly incoherent and desperate ways. Historic allies publicly condemned his actions. His own team started leaking information and considering mass resignations. And each attempt by him to intimidate or threaten only made his situation worse. What started as Trump trying to show strength turned into the biggest diplomatic humiliation an American president has ever suffered. But here's what you need to understand. This story is far from over. Because now other countries are looking at this revolt and realizing they can challenge the United States when there's authoritarian behavior. They're planning even more drastic measures. Conversations about coordinated economic sanctions, discussions about diplomatic isolation in other areas. The real question that nobody's asking publicly, but everyone's thinking is, will Trump be able to survive this historic humiliation politically? Or is this the last straw that will finally mobilize even Republicans to take a stand? And more importantly, how much more damage can he cause before someone stops him? Look, I know this kind of analysis bothers a lot of powerful people. But that's exactly why this channel exists. I don't have a party funding my work. I don't have a corporation telling me what I can or can't say. I have no interest in hiding inconvenient truths. What you saw here are the real backstories that mainstream media doesn't show, or shows halfway because they're afraid of offending someone important. If this analysis made sense to you, if it helped you understand what's really happening beyond the superficial headlines, hit that like button down below. And share this with those friends and family members who need to see this. Because quality information, honest analysis, and independent journalism need to circulate. You who are watching are part of a community that doesn't accept lies, doesn't accept authoritarianism, fights every day for democracy and truth. And each like, each share, each subscription strengthens this network of people who refuse to stay silent. So subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next exclusive analyses. Because what's coming is even more explosive, even more revealing. And since you made it this far, there's another video you need to watch right now. While the UN revolts against Trump, other world leaders are planning devastating economic retaliation against the United States. Coordinated sanctions, trade embargoes, exclusion from billion-dollar deals. It's the direct continuation of this story, and it's getting more intense by the hour. The link is right here in the description, and also pinned in the first comment. Click and watch it now because this is far from over, and you won't want to miss the next chapter of this historic crisis.